Okay, episode 592, part 2. We're going to finish our discussion on shelving today. And I'm going to read the definition of it and show you an example between shelving and what a lot of people consider true double dies. If you want to watch part 1 for the beginning of this discussion, click the link. I'll probably put it in the description and at the end. Click the link below in the description if you want to hear the discussion prior to watching this video if you did not see it already. So I found a 1969S in one of the previous episodes. Watch that episode if you want. And it was a good learning experience for me because it's a very valuable coin. This one might be I'll put this to the side to look later. It might be a repunch mint mark, it might not be. And I got very excited over it. And it turned out to be most likely not a true double die. And if you go onto blogs and Arab websites, you will find a lot of people who think they found double dies, and then they get beat up in the comments below by people saying, you're stupid because that's not a double die. Of course, you're not stupid. It's just very common error for amateurs, which I'm kind of in between amateur and a novice, or novice and an amateur and a intermediate type of numismatist slash coin collector. 1960. Okay, that's a variety. They come in small and large dates. So I got excited about the 1969S. I made a bunch of videos saying I found a true double die. And then as I continued to do research on it, I realized that most likely it was shelving. Just a very severe example of mechanical doubling. Probably on the higher end of mechanical doubling. And towards the end of the video, I'll get into what that means. So, mechanical doubling. I'll show it to you. You can read it yourself if you want, and then I'll read it very quickly. Yeah, that's it. You could just Google mechanical doubling. That's a picture of mechanical doubling, which looks very much like a double die. And I'll read that very quickly while I show the next penny. Okay, mechanical doubling or machine doubling, also known as strike doubling, is a type of coin error where a slight movement or bounce of the die during the striking process, which is when the coin is created, creates a flattened shelf-like appearance on the coin's design. Typically, next to the design, there'll be a duplicate, a flat duplicate of the element that you're looking at. This is distinct from double dies, which are caused by errors in the die creation process and result in rounded raised doubling, which a lot of people call true double dies. And And they say it does not add significant value to it. And this is what a true double die would look. What a lot of people consider true double dies, where you see the rounded doubled mark by a second pressing of the die when the die is created by other dies, or by there's another word for it. It's not coming to my head right now. There's a name for the previous dies that make the final working die. The hub, by previous hubs on the final working die. Oh, I didn't finish with this penny. So you can go back to those pictures if you want to reference the discussion going forward. So on that, so the question becomes, now they have tons and tons of FS class errors, for example, extra thickness and other types of spreading that are considered double dies. But in language, a lot of coin experts consider that second rounded doubling that I showed as being true double dies. For whatever reason, but that's the language they use. And 1970, I think it's the 70S that comes in the variety, small and large date. Oh, look at this. Interesting. Is it an error or is it environmental damage? Not sure. So the 1969 S I found was most likely not the $100,000 true double die, as it does not have the true double die rounding. So to take this to another level, how do you know the difference? First of all, you need to know how many dies have been recorded, how many working dies have been recorded with what they call the true double die or the double die. In the case of the 1969 S, there is only one die recorded. So there's only one example of that. So anything that does not look like the ones that they show, right? The ones that you find in your research, they're not double dies because there's only one die that made that error. There's only one die. So there's only one appearance. So anything that doesn't look like the ones that you can find images of is not the true double die. You follow me? Unless there's another die variation that you can find, which there is not for the 1969 S. There's only one die. And they have to match the appearance of the ones that have been found in history. So that's when I realized that what I had was not, because there was no other variation similar to the one I found, right? So that's what told me ultimately that what I had was not a double die variation, was because there was only one variation of that working die that made the double die. So you have to find the die variation to find a true double die. So that's when you can find the other class doubling errors. Is you have to know what the die variation is, and then you have to match it to what historically has been found through research. For the 1969 S, there's only one variation, and I didn't have it, point blank and simple. So what I had was an extreme example of a extreme example of a of mechanical doubling. The shelving was incredible. It really gave a nice secondary image of the elements of liberty on the 69S that I found. And that's why it was so confusing to me until I did a deep dive into the research on it, which was, of course, after I already made the video saying that I found a double die, which I did not, and that was an error. I left them up, but I did make a comment on below the video saying that it's a shelving and it's not a double die. I did make that correction, but as I'm not a numismacist, I fell into that trap of making that error. Now, even though they say that they're valueless, right? They have no value. In the case of the 69S, that is actually the most rare version of a double die of all copper pennies is the 1969S. It's rarer than the 1955. They corrected that error much sooner than they did the 1955. So a 1955 with shelving might be worth, even an extreme example might be worth 10 or 15 or 20 or 30, maybe even $50 just to have that example, right? So a numismacist might want the example of an extreme shelving, or somebody who's a coin collector might still want the example of a shelving of the 1955, and they might pay for it, of a really extreme example of the mechanical doubling, even though they call it worthless. It's not worthless in the sense of it has some educational value and some collectability. Okay. Worthless, I mean, $50 compared to $20,000 in a sense is worthless, right? And if you compare it, and for other types of shelving, they might be worth $1, or someone might try to sell it for $1. So $1 versus 300 again might be considered worthless. And a numismacist, of course, has their own discretion of what they consider worthless, especially if they truly, dislike those types of coins. They don't like them to be misidentified, so they might say it's worthless for that alone. 89. It's a zinc cent. Found very few zinc cents in this penny roll, but that's one of them. So, 71S. Look at that. Found an S. S's on copper pennies tend to be slightly more valuable than other mint marks or no mint mark P's. 69D, we'll look for the floating roof. Not really, no floating roof. So, for example, how much is the 1955? I showed you the picture before of the true double die 1955, which is this penny right here. And they want $2,800. This coin, and it's graded. It's a graded coin. This coin was probably worth, I remember them about 3 or 4 years ago costing about $300. Now they're closer to $3,000, depending on the grade. That's to show you how valuable they are and how much they went up in recent years. That was inflation really hit the coin market very hard. So people who had collections there, they saw their values go up very high. So on the 69S, what is that extreme? I would not be surprised if somebody would not want to pay around $200 for that example of shelving that I have. If you watch the video, so even though it's not worth $100,000 or $50,000 or $20,000, it's probably still worth $100 to $200 easily, because it's such an extreme example that I couldn't even find one that was that example. So it still has, in my opinion, some collectability because it's a 69S, because it's the most viable double die. Someone might want to pay $100 for an example of an extreme shelf, just to see that there is one out there, right? Because there's even very few of those out there. So for that, in that case, there probably is some value for that example of shelving. And I did see even in auction for that they saw in auction weaker examples of shelving selling for $30, $40, $50. So shelving is the flat-like doubling that you'll see on the sides of the date, the Liberty, the motto, or any of the elements on the reverse, any of the letters, or the building. You'll see like another duplicate, but it's very flat. And now, the other FS die variations, that's really a whole nother topic, because some of those you need microscopes to look at. They're very small, and they take a lot of time to analyze the coin to try and determine if whether or not it has the FS variation. Here goes a nice floating roof. Oh, wow. I got to be honest with you. This is probably the best example of floating roof I've ever found. There is absolutely no line coming under the top portion of the roof. I'll take a picture of this for the thumbnail. What a great example of floating roof that is. A lot of people don't even consider that to be an error, more of a novelty, but they do collect it. Maybe worth $5, $10. And for that example, that's probably the best example I've ever seen. Okay, so that's the end of this discussion, end of this penny roll hunt. It was a very mostly copper. There were only like 5 zinc cents in the whole roll, which is very rare. It was a very nice penny roll hunt. I hope it helped to distinguish the difference between shelving and what people consider a true double die. Again, notwithstanding the other FS class doublings that are a whole nother more complicated, involved video. I've done some videos on them, like extra thickness, which is like, I think one of the classes, class 1 or class 6. I forget which one it is. And they look very different, but you can see the lines going through them, and you can see the doubling, not to the degree of the true double dies that I showed, but they are slightly, they're more close together. All right. So please click like and subscribe if you're still here. God bless. Thank you. And leave a comment below.